Hello, I'm Suzi Ronson.
That's not it. A bit more than that.
Oh, okay. I don't know. Okay. Hello. Okay. I'm going to get to it. Hello. I'm Suzi Ronson, author of the book Me and Mr. Jones. I worked with David Bowie and the Spiders from Mars in the 70s on those fantastic tours in England, America, and Japan. And I'm here to chat to you about those times.
That's fantastic, Susie. It's a real pleasure to have you on because I'm a huge Bowie fan. My story is working with people whose records I'd bought as a kid. So, I worked with Bowie much later in the Earthling period, out on the road doing his
Yeah.
radio and TV and everything. But to having seen that moment splitting the Spiders from Mars of Promise, it's great to get a different perspective from somebody who kind of was there. So I've got a lot of my own questions. But
Great.
obviously and I know the story, but some others won't. And obviously they should go and buy the book because everything's there. But you were
Well, it is
working
a
in a hair
funny
salon.
story. It is a funny story, isn't it? I mean,
Oh
it's
yeah.
it's one of those things, a chance meeting with an older woman in my hairdressing salon that led me to meet her son, David Bowie, do his haircut, which it seems, when I look back, it seems like such a daring thing to have done. His hair was long and wavy, and it was David Bowie. But of course, David Bowie wasn't David Bowie in those days. He wasn't even famous. He was playing folk songs at the Three Tons pub. He'd had the hit, Space Oddity, but he wasn't famous, not like he became. No.
Well, I heard stories that he was behind on his rent in London and everything. He'd been around for a long time. I mean, the thing with Bowie was he was always a change agent. I mean, I've read about him wanting to kind of music was the easy access area for him to get into other areas of art. As he went into movies and stuff and things like that. But you actually met Angie before you met David, didn't you?
I did. I think Angie was like his recruiter because she didn't only recruit me, she also recruited Freddie Beretti and Danielle Palmer and a lot of their friends. At that time, David was the quiet one. Angie was the outrageous, flamboyant personality, and David was really quite quiet. And I think that she would kind of go around doing crazy things, and he would look and pick up on it. Yes, he did.
Yeah, it was a kind of match made. It obviously didn't last. He met the love of his life a lot later on. But I mean,
Yeah.
David was kind of. It was that time, wasn't it? Because the things that I've read about, and because of my interest in Bowie, and stuff like that, is. I mean, we'll talk about Mick in a minute, but the thing was that she kind of I think she might have had. She probably picked up straight on you and think this girl can help us with the image, and the look and thing, and then just passed it over to you because I don't think that was like a management job in any way, was it? It was more kind of how to
It
sell
was well,
records.
it was chance number one. And I think because she came into the salon with Mrs. Jones and asked me to do something crazy with her hair. And I put bright stripes, like a bright blue, bright pink, and a frosty silver stripes down the side of her head. And I think she was like, well, because no one had done that. And I think to this day, I wonder why we had these crazy colors in our salon. I know the ones I used on her were like a water rinse, but they weren't, they were, if you added a few drops of pink to water and you put it on old girl's hair that was a bit grey or a bit yellow, it kind of, perked them up a little rosy glow or a little blue tint. My grandmother used to have purple hair. It was crazy, I know. So we had those. That wasn't what I used on David, but when I used that on Angie, on bleached hair, it was brilliant. It came out so well. So I think that was a bit like my calling card.
So David, you said David was quiet when you met him. So kind of, Angie was kind of the spokesperson on behalf of and you obviously met Mick through that. So there was always a happy ever after. Um, what did I mean? I always said like, back in the day, if you were kind of a record company and you're looking at two acts that you wanted to kind of market would get the right image, Elvis Presley and David Bowie, it kind of began and ended then because you look at like, well, I could imagine you with your skill looking at him and thinking, oh my God, I can do something with this guy's face.
Yes. I mean, that was the thing. He showed me the photograph of a girl in a magazine that had, it wasn't exactly how the haircut ended up, but she had a little screw at the front, a spiky bit at the front, and her hair was bright red. And he said to me, can you do that? And the first thing that hit me, of course, was a girl's hairstyle, which, it sounds so ridiculous these days, but back then you're like, wow, that's a girl's hairstyle. And how could I actually do it? But I did do it. And of course, it was so exciting because, as you say, he was the perfect person to carry something like this off of. Tall, rock star thin, great face, long neck. I mean, he was the perfect person. White skin. Yeah, it worked out really well. He was delighted. He loved it immediately.
I'll tell you, when the Spiders whole kicked into action stuff, I mean, you were only 22 when you kind of got involved, weren't you? But I'm sure you had those moments where you kind of sat there and quietly smiled to yourself and looked at all those people trying to look like him.
Yes. I mean, it was so flattering, really. Everybody was trying to copy not just David, Trevor Boulder, because I love Trevor's haircut. And that was certainly my haircut. I did the spikes on top and the long sides, and I dyed it blue black. That was a great haircut. Woody had more difficult hair. It's kind of, he hasn't got any hair now, I don't think. But it was very dry and frizzy. But he was a good looking boy too. Skinny, skinny was definitely the way to be. Mick
Trevor...
wouldn't let me touch his hair, not for ages. It wasn't until his hair broke up in a swimming pool because he'd been swimming in a pool that had chlorine in it.
Oh my
and his
God.
hair was bleached, and it just started breaking up. That's when he got spikes, whether he liked them or not.
I bet they were the most interesting looking blokes from Hull.
Oh my God. Well, it was Phoenix. It was Phoenix. And it was like, I guess, an old person's home kind of a thing. There was no holiday makers there. We were waiting because David wasn't flying at the time. And then a couple of gigs got cancelled. I'm not sure the desert was ready for David. So a couple of gigs got cancelled. So we were there for a week or so, quite a long time, before we went on to LA.
So going back to that period, were you kind of, I mean, I remember reading something Mike Garson had written a couple of years after David died. And he said the great thing about David was he didn't micromanage. Well, I noticed that myself when he left me to do stuff and asked me what I thought. And I said, well, you're going to do any of them, David, I'd do this one. And he said, well, if you think I should do it, Tony, I'll do it. And it was like being nice. I thought, oh my God, David Bowie's agreed to do something on my recommendation.
He was great like that. He was really good like that. He didn't micromanage. He didn't think that he knew best about everything. And even if, it was kind of a bit nerve-wracking offering an opinion to someone like David, who was so full of these good ideas, but he'd look and he'd take the measure of it. And he'd either say, yeah, okay, or maybe not. But it was never done. He didn't make you feel like a turnip for suggesting something. He didn't make you feel like a fool. So when I suggested let's put some gold streaks down the back, he was completely up for it.
Tell me how how the Spiders, were they all mates back in Hull, the three of them?
Yeah, they were in a band called the Rats. But I don't think Woody was in it, but John Cambridge was in it, who was the one that got Mick involved with David, John Cambridge. But they were, Hull, I mean, it's just quite a small town now. It was even smaller then, I'm sure, Driffield and wherever it was. So, yes, they were all musicians and they all knew each other.
So how was your relationship with Tony DeFries?
Tony was kind of a mentor in a way. I mean, I know he's done some dastardly deeds. A lot of managers did. A lot of artists did. But really, he opened my eyes. He opened my eyes to so many things. He was the one person, when you're in England and you get this lower class, middle class, upper class business. But before the internet, everybody I knew in the middle class thought we were midway between lower class and upper class. And he was the one that told me that wasn't actually true. We were at the Dorchester and I steps outside and we were talking about my mum and dad and Bromley. And my mum and dad thought they'd made it. They got a, 2 up, 2 down suburban house and semi-detached. And they thought they'd done okay. And they had done okay. But then he's told me the values of the flats that were around us by the Dorchester on Park Lane. And then he told me the value of them. Well, I had no idea. I had no clue that people had that kind of money. No clue. So he really opened my eyes to many, many things, Tony. I'm eternally grateful to him, really.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing is, Angie kind of gave you the gig, I suppose, and you kind of came in. But I read...
Ultimately, everything's up to David.
Yeah.
So she might have suggested me, but if he hadn't liked me, hadn't liked what I'd done, hadn't known who I was, I wouldn't have got that gig. He'd have found somebody else. I mean, they knew hairdressers in London. I think one of the reasons they didn't want to use one because the others would have become jealous.
Yeah.
So they used someone from the outside. So no, if if David hadn't liked me, I would never have gotten that gig. Never.
Yeah, yeah. I think also it was the right kind of act at the right time as well, that period in the 70s. And people were kind of almost in a way waiting for something like that to take off. The thing is, I mean, without getting too nerdy about it, but looking into kind of, the background of it, the fact is, I mean, it's historical in as much as you look at a guy like Leonard Cohen, he's got ripped off by his accountant, and it was only Hallelujah that brought him
Well,
back at his age.
didn't everybody in those
Sting,
days?
everybody and things. But I think you get that thing when you're young. It's like a contract's thrust in front of you, and like they sign it without really reading it. I mean, I've had
That's right.
history of that with bands I've worked with from my hometown in Manchester. And then you spend the rest of your life trying to get out of it. But do you think
Exactly.
that at that moment at the Hammersmith Odeon, when he said it's not only the last night of the tour, it's the last night we'll ever play? I mean, that must have been like, oh my God, none of them knew anything. But the thing is, they all went to a cafe afterwards almost to celebrate. Not the band, but.
Well, they did. Well, that's not quite true. You see, I knew. I'd heard about this in Japan, so I knew this was going to happen.
Oh, did you?
No one. Yeah.
Wow.
I was in the room when DeFries and David and Mick were there, and they said they were going to break up the band. I was completely horrified. I couldn't understand it because we were doing so well. I couldn't understand it. But after that evening, no one spoke to me about it. Mick didn't say anything. David didn't say anything. DeFries didn't say anything. And I kind of thought they might change their mind. It was going so well. I thought maybe he'd change his mind, but no, he didn't. But the people who didn't know were Woody and Trevor.
Mm. So Mick knew.
So that night, I was really mad. I thought David was disgraceful not to have told them before he went on, just to do it to them like that on stage. I thought that was awful way to do it. And I didn't go to that Cafe Royal party. And Woody and Trevor went to the Cafe Royal party hoping to talk to David, and he just blanked them.
I noticed you said that kind of when it was done, that was the end of the relationship with them, full stop.
And he never saw them again.
Yeah.
He didn't see, at least we saw Mick a couple of times, but even us, because Mick was then, long as he didn't mention anything to the band, he was going to be the next superstar. He was going to do his record and all the rest of it. Now, I kind of thought, naively, that David would be around with Mick to do his record with him. Never heard a word from him.
Yeah, I find that really strange because, like I say, I met a different David Bowie, because obviously, like
I think when he got older, I think he got nicer as he got older.
Yeah, he was. I always say, from my experience, I work with a lot of large artists, big artists over the years, but I find the biggest artists are the easiest to work with because they know it's not all about them. It's about a team of people around them. And I think the thing is that, that excitement and euphoria of being in the band and then it explodes. And when you look at it, like the videos, and I presume Mick Rock was photographing all that back then, was he? Because
I love that man.
We know that classic fellatio shot that you said, like Mick didn't even know anything about it, But in those days, Suzi, photographers were allowed on the stage. And, now it's 3 numbers in the orchestra pit and you're out. You would never get shots like that. Hendrix at Woodstock burning the guitar. Those iconic photographs. And that is one of the great photographs of
really is. And David set it up. He told Mick before he went and watched this now, I was in front of Mick. I'm come low, we were looking at it low. And Mick had his eyes shut and I'm thinking, oh my God, what can he be thinking, What can he be thinking? He didn't say anything, he just kept on playing, but his eyes were shut. He was afterwards, though. I said, are you all right? He said, my parents. And I'm like, I know, I was thinking about my parents. And I'm just a bloody hairdresser, And he was worried about what his mum and dad would think because he wasn't gay. Mick wasn't gay at all. David wasn't bloody gay either, I don't think. But
the thing I loved about Bowie was the fact that certainly his career in America, you at that time, if you'd announced you were gay, it would have been a no-go area. But the thing is with Bowie is he kept people guessing. He didn't answer if he was gay or not. And that was so cool,
It was like it gave there was a lot more girls in David's bed than there was blokes. That's for damn sure. In actual fact, I only think I saw 1 or 2 that were alone with him. And you know what? Alone with him. Everyone assumes people do this and that. Behind closed doors, I don't know what went on. They might have sat and smoked a joint. I don't know what people did. I don't. And I don't think David was half as gay as he said he was. I think it was a lot of effect. I
And
do.
do you think how was he already into that kind of drug phase when you came on board, or did that come
No,
afterwards?
there was no drugs on the tours I was on. And he said, this is why he gave himself an excuse. He said, after I did that American tour, he started getting involved with coke. Well, even after becoming familiar with the drug myself, people sniff, they touch their nose, they run into the bathroom, all those little telltale signs. I never saw that with David.
And it
Not in a
was coke.
dressing room,
It wasn't heroin. It was coke.
it was coke. It was never heroin. I don't know if it was ever heroin, but I never heard.
I thought it was heroin, but the other thing is on the kind of plus side. I mean, if you look at the 70s, I mean, all those 27 clubs, the Brian Jones, the Janis Joplins, the Jim Morrisons, the
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix. The amazing thing about Bowie was he killed it off. As he killed off Ziggy, he killed off his addiction, or we wouldn't be talking about him. It'd have been another
Well,
one.
he didn't kill off his addiction till much after Ziggy. His addiction didn't start kicking in until the end of Ziggy. His addiction was throughout
Oh, sorry, that's what I meant.
Diamond
Yeah,
Dogs
yeah. But still,
and Young Americans. Look how thin he is on Young Americans. I see him doing a television show, I think the Dick Cavett show. And he is high as a kite. He's fiddling with his cane. He can hardly talk. But when he does talk, he makes complete sense. And when you read books about it, he was a mess, but it wasn't until after those Ziggy days were over. And I think when he met Woody Woodmansey, I saw Woody, and he saw him years later. And he kind of said, he was sorry. He kind of said he didn't realize that the most exciting part of his career was when the coming up, which was the part I was part of. That coming up when you're going from nothing to you can't get out that theatre fast enough. You can't walk down the street because my job was the hairdresser. But, there was one time we stopped in a roadside cafe. We're all on the bus, right? And Mick says, oh, come on, Trev. We're going to go in the cafe. And David looks at them and says, you sure? I said, I'm going for you. No, we're going. Come on, Trev. He gets off the bus. Well, he's got his bit of mascara on. He's got his high-heeled long boots, his hair. David's got the same thing with his big bushy sides. They weren't silver, big bushy sides. And they're walking across. I mean, look what a sight these two look. They're walking across to the restaurant. Well, everybody was looking and staring and pointing, and some people were yelling, Well, they didn't last for long. They threw bus on the back and back on the bus. I mean, David couldn't stop laughing. And after that, I always used to go shopping for them because they couldn't go shopping. You couldn't go around England looking like that in 1972. You just couldn't do it.
Yeah. Because after the other two were kind of literally put out to rest, weren't they? But with Mick, like you said, it seemed the obvious kind of continuation because he was involved with Transformer and in Hunter and everything like that.
Well, he was Transformer, in my opinion. I was around during that time. I mean, I know they co-produced. Mick didn't get paid for that. He fought for a credit. He had to fight for a credit. He played all the instruments. He did all the arrangements. He played the piano on Perfect Day.
I know, yeah.
The arrangement has never changed. No matter who does it, they use that same arrangement. And that was Mick.
But I read that you kind of, after it all ended, a few of you went over to Italy, and that's when you and Mick became like an item as such. And you got kind of, did you see everything in Mick slowly and gradually as you were working as part of the infrastructure of the team?
Well, yes. You saw what he did.
Yeah. Talented, but an all-round good geezer.
You could see I was in the studio quite a lot. And Mick was always there. I mean, when we recorded pin-ups in Chateau de Iréville after the 1980 floor show, we flew out there. But it was Mick in the studio at 8 o'clock in the morning, bouncing tracks and doing this and that, making sure the sound. Now, remember, in those days, if you got 24 tracks, you were lucky. I think we only had 16 tracks there. So he's bouncing things, and it takes a certain skill, no matter what the engineer was like. You have to know and get the balance and this and that. And he would cut tape to the blade. I mean, incredible.
I remember in those days as a fan, I was 18, watching the Spiders several times. And so I was looking at Mick as much as I was looking at Bowie. It was kind of like you could have put him in front of stage.
Every girl in the front row was as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think David was a little bit like, because I think with Mick, they knew what they were getting.
Was
you know.
Mick a humble guy, or was there any anger that
Oh,
set in?
too
Because
humble for his own good.
did you give him a bit of a kick up the ass after it all, or what?
Well, no, I loved him like that. It was
Mm.
him.
No, but
He
what
was
I'm
like he would
saying
know. I mean,
is,
David would let us sign autographs for him. Well, Mick had a fit. He said, "Don't you dare." He would never let me do anything like that. He was, I mean, when Mick got his dander up, he used to get angry. I mean, he got very angry in What the Hoople. That was the only time I ever saw him get really pissed off with people. With not with Ian, but with the rest of Mark, because they were ridiculous. They acted like children. So he got cross with them. But Mick rarely ever lost his rag. He
mm,
didn't. He just
but
didn't. He wasn't that kind of bloke.
looking at it as an entity, that Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. I mean, I also read something, saw something on YouTube um, thing on Bowie, where some guy was talking about Bowie was actually like, looking at that period and writing stuff around it and stuff that were relative to him, related to him, like things like, you hear the album A Lad Insane, but it was A Lad Insane,
Yeah.
which was, I thought, oh
So
my God,
clever.
it's
Wasn't
so
that so
obvious.
clever? I mean, you can say whatever you want about David using people, this and that, but David had the songs.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
his songwriting was extraordinary. And I think at the end of it, you know how it is before you become famous. You're like Ziggy, like we had Hunky Dory, and then he met the band, and then the culmination of 10, 15 years of work bloomed in Ziggy, and he got it. Then Aladdin saying, now you're riding high. The record company's saying, I want another record. And there's photographs and there's interviews and there's television performances and tours. And there's no time to recharge.
Mm.
So I think he was lucky to have been able to do pin-ups because it was it was a record that wasn't his own writing. And then I think he needed a break. More than anything, I think David needed a break.
What I loved about it, because I was never into that English art school stuff, Genesis, ELP, the Nice, bands like that. Begin and ended art school stuff, begin and ended with Bowie for me. And the thing is,
Yeah.
I look at that period, and I think the thing is that, and again, I was young and I didn't appreciate it or understand it until a lot later. But the thing is, he created this myth of this alien rock star. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, in as much as they were flying first class all over all over the world, staying in top hotels. I mean, I even read something about a girl behind the desk in the office in Japan having a breast implant paid for, but nobody realized they were paying for that. That word recoupable didn't exist, did it? But it
Well,
did.
Tony DeFries realized it,
Oh yeah, yeah. But isn't that screwing somebody over?
David did not, and it was. I mean, we only did that on the first American tour. On the second American tour, it was very different. We were much more money conscious. We had to be because the first American tour, I think we spent $1 million or something in 1972. It was crazy stuff. We were all staying in the Beverly Hills Hotel and the Plaza in New York. And, the thing is, none of us had ever done it before. I'd never done anything like that. The roadies were the same. No one had ever really done anything of this magnitude before. We all thought it was normal. We all thought it was, except for the American crew. They were like, what the hell are you doing? Because usually top flight bands like that, they would stay in the nice hotels and the crew would stay in a shitty hotel down the street. We didn't. We all stayed together. DeFries wanted to create a scene and he never gave us any cash. He said, you can charge everything to your room, but there's no cash. So it kept us all together. You couldn't go out. Why would you go out and buy food out of your own money where you can sit in the hotel and get it paid for?
Yeah.
So everyone stayed together all the time. And it created a great vibe. It really did.
An amazing thing I thought about the whole Ziggy thing, it was like, 10 years before MTV, could you imagine that lot being on MTV? They would have exploded like with one show in the video. And they had nothing at that. But, going back to what I was saying, Suzi, about, I love that. Sometimes I love like hype in the record industry, where Bowie kind of created that myth of that alien rock star. But the moment he went out on stage, he was every bit as good as he should have been. And you can't fool the public, because if you're asking them to do this, spend money, buy the record, come to the gigs, and then it's just hype, that you lose them, you never get them back. But that was the great thing about the whole band. They came out and it was like, wow, this is manna from heaven. This is incredible.
Well, David did have Mick Ronson to play off of, and
Oh yeah, I don't
without
think
Mick on the front, without Mick on the front of the stage, I'm not sure it would have
I'm
been.
not. I'm not patronising you in any way. I'm saying if he wasn't in that band, it wouldn't have been. It was almost like a double header, the pair of them. And no disrespect to the other guys, but they were a rhythm section. Mick was kind of like,
Yeah,
you take those solos out of Moon Age Daydream and things like that. It's
yeah.
kind of like, who
Moon
else
Age
would it?
Daydream. Moon Age Daydream was a folk song
Oh
before
my
Mick got
God!
hold of it. It was. I heard that. I've heard the
So he did all
original.
the
It's a
arrangements.
folk song. He
So
put so much. He made David rock. David was a folk artist until he met Mick Ronson. I mean,
uh,
Mick was around for Man Who Sold the World, and he was around. He did all the piano playing and the arrangements for Hunky Dory. All
did
the
he?
piano on that was Mick, and
And he
Nick
was a
Hewitt,
guitar
some of it,
player.
and all the guitar playing. So, but before Mick, David was I think David would have made it anyway because he was so
Yeah,
determined. But it might have been a different David without Mick Ronson.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
very lucky for the pair of them, not just for David. It was very lucky for Mick that he met David too, because he was so talented, but he wasn't a songwriter and he wasn't really a front man. He was the best sideman in the world. I can't believe it. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame won't put him up as a great sideman. Duh. He was the greatest sideman ever, Mick.
Did he never get inducted into the Hall of
No,
Fame?
he never did. I mean,
I can't
I've given up.
believe.
No, I won't even talk to them
I
anymore
can't
because
believe some of the people that get inducted into that, and some of the ones that get inducted when they're like 80, that should have been inducted in God knows how long ago. But it's
exactly. And the thing
ridiculous
is,
because
there is a sideman category.
mm,
I don't.
what?
When I realised there was a sideman category, I gave up on those guys. I'm like, fuck it,
So
no.
after the Spiders and things, what professionally? Obviously you guys were together then, you and Mick. What did he do apart from the things that we know about? With the Transformer and stuff. What did he think of form his
Boy,
own
that was
band?
during the David time. After him and Dave, after the Hammersmith thing, Mick was going to do. He did his own record, his Slaughter on 10th Avenue. And another thing, you see, this is a fault, and I'm sure Tony might even say it was a fault too. Like, as I say, I kind of thought David was going to be around and help and be in the studio and be pally, best pals kind of a thing. That was my mistake. I think Mick thought that as well, but it didn't happen.
That's a bit
So then
disappointing.
Mick had to put a band together. Then he had to do a record. We did the record. He had an idea of what he did the record. The record sounded good. And
Sorry,
then
was
he's
that
going to go
under
on tour.
was that under
So
Main Man
not
still?
only 2 weeks before we're doing the first date, DeFreeze calls us into the office. Michael, he said, I've done you a favour. I'm getting you the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra to play at your first 2 gigs at the Rainbow. Well, I'm so naive. I'm thinking, oh, great. Then I never thought about what Mick had to do. He then had to write all their parts, do rehearsals with them in 2 weeks. It was too much.
So Tony made that decision without just sitting down and having a chat with him about it.
Yes.
That's
He just
insane.
told him, this is what's happening. And I mean, I'm flabbergasted about it now because I didn't realize at the time. I said, oh, that'd be wonderful kind of a thing. And I could see Mick was like, oh, fuck, what am I going to do? But he did it. I mean, he did it well, but huge amount of pressure to put on that lad. He needed time off, like David needed time off. He needed time to find his own way and decide what he was going to do.
I think, I mean, he was probably suffering from, loyalty and stuff, because in a way, if he'd have moved on and found somebody else with some different ideas, they could have turned him into the superstar that he could easily have become with a bit of guidance from a different kind of, management.
Well, just, they wanted to make him a pop star. They want him to pose with his shirt off. Well, yeah. Mick is he's not frightened of showing his sexuality on stage. He strips to the waist and he does all those, and he's a fantastic thing. But Mick off stage won't like that at all. He's like a completely different person on stage. Mick off stage was very humble, very gentle man. He wasn't particularly running after every girl that came around the corner. Even before I was with him, I never saw him. Rarely would you see a girl in his room. Rarely.
I would imagine. I
And
mean,
he was,
I never met the guy, but I would imagine that he was humble enough to think he was so lucky to have that ability to get that job and be on a stage with a room full of people playing and doing what he
exactly,
loves. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
exactly.
that.
He
But
was so grateful. He was so grateful that he wasn't still a school gardener in Hull. Get married. And he was so grateful for that. The same as I was so grateful I wasn't sitting in Beckenham rolling up some girl's hair.
yeah,
We were both so grateful
I
to
think
have changed our lives. I mean, we were both looking for it. I've been to Italy when I was 17. I came to the States when I was 20, all before I met David. I came to the States the first time on a Freddie Laker prop plane.
yeah. Do
And that
you?
makes me feel so old, but it's funny, isn't it?
Well, I don't know. I get, sometimes I have to listen to what I'm saying and thinking, God, I sound like a boring old bloke. I say things like, I wish my mother was alive to thank her for the time she gave
Well,
birth,
I think that too. I really wish, and I do wish that, because you're so ungrateful. Your parents do all this stuff for you, and you're just like, I mean, I moved to America. She never forgave me.
Mm. Do you, I mean, it certainly applies to me because I'd been full on just, behind the scenes, getting my own PR company and stuff. And I don't
Yes.
think, that when the music industry, and I use this in my own kind of interviews and stuff, when I brought my book out and stuff and things, I said the turn of the century came, that the music industry was falling apart around me and I hadn't done anything wrong. But I had like 5 company cars, 8 staff, rent,
Yeah.
overhead. And I did my Ziggy Stardust. I came to America to reinvent myself. I mean, they call it innovative entrepreneur. I call it flying by the seat of my pants. I had no idea what I was going to do. But the thing is that, you know what? I mean, I'm 71 now, I'm kind of like, I'm almost proud to admit it. I don't really think the gratitude sets in when you sit back and think, wow, that was quite a ride.
Well, I sometimes I talk to people, and I'm not grateful enough either. I am grateful. I look at the rest of my family, and I'm very grateful for how far I've come. I'm very grateful I brought my brother with me, because the rest of my family live in the council houses still. It's mum and dad never did, but most of my cousins did not do so well.
Well,
They didn't actually do it.
it's great that it's great that you decided to document it all and share it with others, because there's a huge amount of people that there are a lot of David Bowie books, but there are a lot of them that aren't that different. I mean, to have somebody to
Well, I
be
didn't
in
want
that.
to do a book like that. I mean, the first time when I first started thinking about doing a book was a long time ago. But all they wanted was like, well, who fucked who and how did they fuck
Yeah.
them? But and I wasn't going to write a book like that. I didn't want to write a book like that. I wanted to write a funny book. I think this is quite a funny book.
Oh, it's great. It's brilliant.
It's funny, and it's not a David Bowie book. It's got David in it, but it's not really about David. It's much more about me, because everyone's written every bloody note he ever played.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see the sense in doing that. And besides, I didn't know. So
yeah, it's funny really, because when I wrote an article on the USA Today printed on the 2nd anniversary of Bowie's death, and it was so easy to write. The first paragraph was, "There really is a star man. He did come and meet me, and he did blow my mind," and I was writing like this, like a kid, and it was just
that sounds great.
I can't type, but I'm like this, and I'm frantic, and get a load of this. We're going to run out of time soon, but I'll just tell you this, right? I was at college it was a 70% girls and 30% guys, so it wasn't hard getting a date. So I asked this girl out, right, and I'd just bought Ziggy Stardust, and I went to pick her up on a Saturday night, and this is a totally true story. Went to pick her up on a Saturday night, and in those days, the mother would sling you into the living room while she was getting ready upstairs, and like the nerd that I was, I rifled through the record collection, and I pulled out Hunky Dory, and I'm thinking, oh my God, the girl I'm taking out for the first time has got the album before the one I bought. So naturally, I married and had 2 kids with her. What else would you do?
Congratulations! What a lovely story that is.
How'd you get that
really
in?
nice story.
Well, Suzi, this has been great. If you ever bored,
Well, it really has been great.
if
I've
you ever
thoroughly
fancy
enjoyed
another
the
chat, I would so
conversation.
love to have you back and just sit. This is
Anytime I'm here, I'm around.
But I love doing this because my premise with this is, if I enjoy the stories, why wouldn't other people? And it's kind of,
Where
you
are
have
you?
that.
Whereabouts are you?
Well, I'm in Maryland. I'm Eastern, but I was in Florida for like 20 years because I had a
Oh, I
place
see.
there.
You're in
Oh
America. Okay,
yeah,
because I'm
yeah.
going back to England next week.
Well,
Yeah.
I was turning 50 and I'm pretty unemployable. I mean, I couldn't go to the job centre and say, well, what are we going to do with him, So I came out to do my
Exactly.
Ziggy, in my little way. And I don't
Well, you've
regret
done
it.
very well, haven't you,
Well,
darling?
I've got some people now that want to do a docu-series with this, so you might be back for some other.
Oh, why not?
Well,
Great
moments
idea.
that rock is what it says on the packet. It's moments that rock, and it's kind of my brand. And the other one is kind of lessons learned from rock and roll because I learned so much from people like Bowie, and I work with the greats on the other side, the Chris Blackwells, the Armored Ertigans, the
Oh, yeah. Well,
music.
do you know Terry Ellis? Do you know
Yeah,
Terry Ellis?
yeah,
I
Chrysalis,
used to
yeah,
work for Terry. I
yeah.
used to
Well, I
work
don't
for
know him. I
Terry.
know who he
And we're
is.
still friends to this day.
My first promotion job was Ireland. So I was working, I bought traffic records in the 60s. I was working with Steve Winwood in the 70s. That doesn't happen to a kid from the north of England. And I don't mind
That's
saying it. I don't mind sounding like, oh God, he's super. I'm not starstruck. I'm just grateful.
No, I'm so grateful too. I am so grateful too.
Suzi
It's lovely
Ronson,
to have met you. Will you send me a little,
I
a
fell
little
in
note
love
when
in
it's
40
coming out?
minutes. It's brilliant. Oh yeah, I'll tell you for nothing. I'm going to be editing it this week. It'll go out next Monday, but I will send you a note. And thank
I
you
would really
so much for your
appreciate it.
time.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much for asking for it. I
My
hope we
pleasure.
meet again
Well,
someday.
you're not getting rid of me. I'll tell you that. Thanks a
Thanks
lot,
so much.
Susie. Bye bye
Okay,
now.
bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.